name is Isabella Carter. I'm 27, and I thought I had the perfect life. For 3 years, my boyfriend Ethan Miller told me I was his whole world. He said he was traveling for work, building a future for us. I believed him, trusted him, loved him blindly. But one night, when my phone buzzed with a photo I was never supposed to see, my world shattered. Because there he was, not at work, not traveling, but smiling across a table with my own cousin, Charlotte Green. Broken heart betrayal cuts deepest when it comes from your own blood. Backhand index pointing right, stay with me, because what I uncovered next turned love into the ultimate revenge story. I grew up in a small town outside of Leeds, England, where family meant everything. Sunday dinners, birthday parties, Christmas mornings, my cousin Charlotte was always right there beside me. We shared secrets, outfits, and childhood dreams. She was like the sister I never had. So when I introduced Ethan to my family, Charlotte was one of the first to welcome him. She laughed at his jokes, complimented his style, and I thought nothing of it. Why would I? She was family. Ethan, 29, worked in corporate sales. His job meant constant travel, or at least that's what he told me. "It's for us, Izzy," he'd say, holding my hand. "Every long trip is another step toward our future together." His voice carried such conviction that I never questioned it, until the lies began to slip through the cracks. It started with small things, missed calls, vague excuses, forgotten details about his supposed meetings. Then one evening, Charlotte uploaded a photo on Instagram. She was at a fancy rooftop restaurant in Manchester. My heart skipped a beat when I spotted a reflection in the wine glass beside her. A man's face. Familiar, too familiar. Ethan. My chest tightened. "No, it can't be," I whispered to myself. But the more I looked, the clearer it became. His sharp jawline, the navy blazer he loved, the watch I gave him last Christmas, all right there. I wanted to scream, but my body went numb. Why would my cousin, my blood, betray me like this? Why would the man I loved choose her? That night, I didn't sleep. My pillow was soaked with silent tears as my mind replayed every moment Ethan claimed he was away for work. Was Charlotte always the real destination? By morning, my doubts had turned into a dangerous determination. If Ethan thought he could keep living this double life, he was wrong. If Charlotte thought she could steal the man I planned to marry, she was about to learn that betrayal always comes with consequences. The game had just begun, and I was no longer the naive girl in love. I was the woman ready to uncover every lie. When I trusted my boyfriend Adrian Cole, I believed every word he said. He told me he was leaving for a week-long business trip, and I didn't question it. I wanted to. But love makes you blind. Somewhere deep inside, though, I felt a strange emptiness. A silent whisper kept warning me that something was wrong. That whisper grew louder with each passing day. One evening, I made up my mind. I couldn't just sit back and wait. I reached out to a tech-savvy friend who helped me track Adrian's phone location. My stomach turned when the signal pointed not to an airport or a business center, but to a luxury hotel downtown. My chest tightened, the kind of hotel I had heard rumors about, the kind where secrets lived behind closed doors. Out of habit, I thought about calling my cousin Lee Morgan, the one person I used to trust with everything. But when I dialed her number, it was turned off. I brushed it aside at first. Maybe she was busy, maybe she was asleep. But unease spread like fire in my veins. By 10 p.m., I couldn't take it anymore. Rain poured down as I drove toward the hotel, the wipers slashing across the windshield like angry hands. Every red light felt like an eternity, every second heavier than the last. When I finally walked into that dimly lit lobby, I felt my world shift. My shoes echoed against the marble floor as if each step was pulling me closer to a nightmare I didn't want to face. And then, through the half-open door of a private lounge, I saw them. Adrian, his charming smile, the one that once belonged to me. But tonight, it was for Lee. She sat beside him, laughing softly, her hand resting on his. The image seared into my soul like fire. My breath caught, my entire body trembled as I pushed the door wide open. The slam of wood against the wall startled them both. Their faces turned pale, their eyes wide with panic. "Adrian," I whispered, my voice cracking. "Why? and Lee, of all people, you. Silence, heavy, crushing. Their guilt filled the air like smoke, suffocating every ounce of trust I once had. That night, my heart didn't just break, it shattered. I stood frozen in that doorway, my heart pounding so hard it echoed in my ears. Adrian and Lee stared back at me, caught in the cruel web of their own betrayal. For a long moment, none of us spoke. The silence felt heavier than thunder. Finally, Adrian tried to speak, his voice trembling. "It's not what it looks like, Alina." But I cut him off. My voice was sharper than I had ever heard it before. "Don't you dare lie to me now. I saw everything." Lee dropped her gaze, guilt written all over her face. She whispered, "Alina, please, I didn't mean for this to happen." Her words felt like knives. The girl who grew up with me, shared secrets, holidays, and childhood laughter, now sat beside the man I thought I would marry. My cousin, my blood, my own shadow. The room felt smaller, the air suffocating. My chest ached with rage and sorrow tangled together. Adrian reached for my hand, but I pulled back as if his touch was poison. "How long?" I demanded. "How long have you two been doing this behind my back?" Neither answered, and that silence screamed louder than any confession. I turned away, but my tears betrayed me. They streamed down my cheeks, hot and bitter. Each one carried the weight of a memory, every kiss, every promise, every night I waited for Adrian to come home. All of it now ashes. The hotel staff passed by, curious eyes peeking through the door. The shame burned inside me. Not only had they betrayed me, but they had humiliated me, in public, in the most unforgivable way. I left the hotel, my legs trembling, the rain outside mixing with my tears. The city lights blurred, and the world around me spun, but one thought kept me standing. I will not let them destroy me. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, staring at the ring Adrian had given me, a symbol of love that turned into a weapon of betrayal. Slowly, with shaking hands, I slipped it off. For the first time, I felt the weight lifting. But deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. They had written the first chapter of betrayal. I would write the final chapter of revenge. The night felt endless. I sat in silence, staring at the blank wall of my apartment. But my mind was anything but empty. The images of Adrian and Lee together replayed in my head like a broken film reel, each frame cutting deeper into my soul. But with every painful replay, something inside me shifted. The hurt began to harden, shaping itself into something far more dangerous: resolve. I wasn't going to cry myself to sleep anymore. I wasn't going to beg for answers that they would never give. If they had chosen betrayal, then I would choose justice. And justice, in my heart, was revenge. I began to think strategically. Adrian's life had always been built on appearances: his spotless reputation at work, his charm in social circles, his polished image as the perfect fiancé. That reputation was his crown, and I knew exactly how to rip it away from him. And Lee, my cousin, the girl who pretended to be my sister, my confidant, she had a weakness too: envy. She had always compared herself to me, my clothes, my friends, even my career. Now she had compared herself to me in the cruelest way possible, by stealing my man. But I would expose her for what she truly was. I pulled out my phone and began collecting evidence. Photos, messages, receipts, anything that would prove their deceit. Every screenshot became a weapon, every detail a bullet in my arsenal. I didn't want a messy confrontation. I wanted something precise, something unforgettable. The next morning, I walked into work with a calm smile plastered on my face, but inside I was planning. Nobody knew that beneath my quiet demeanor, a storm was brewing. I would not strike immediately. Revenge, I realized, was best served slowly. Let them believe they had won. Let them relax into their false happiness. That's when the blade cuts deepest. I envisioned the moment: Adrian's colleagues learning the truth, Lee's family watching her mask shatter, my parents realizing the monster they had allowed into our home. They would all see it. They would all know. That night, as I closed my eyes, I whispered to myself, "You wanted to break me, but you've built something far stronger instead." This was no longer about pain. This was about power. and I was ready to take it back. The day of reckoning didn't arrive suddenly. It was carefully constructed, piece by piece, like a stage set for the grandest performance of my life. I wasn't rushing. No, I wanted every detail perfect. If Adrian and Lee thought they had played me like a fool, I would show them what it meant to be outmaneuvered. The first strike came quietly. I sent an anonymous message to Adrian's company, just a simple envelope with photos of him and Lee, time-stamped on nights he claimed to be working late. Adrian prided himself on being the face of loyalty and discipline at work, the man his bosses trusted. Now, that mask had its first crack. I didn't stop there. While Adrian scrambled to explain himself at work, I reached out to Lee's closest friends. I made sure they saw the screenshots, her late-night texts, her smug messages about finally winning. I didn't have to tell them what to believe. The evidence spoke louder than any accusation. Lee's carefully crafted image as the sweet cousin, the friend everyone adored, began to collapse. But my revenge wasn't just about destroying them separately. No, I wanted to corner them together to expose their betrayal in a way they couldn't escape. That opportunity came when my parents announced a family dinner, a celebration, a gathering where everyone would be present. Adrian, Lee, my family, the perfect audience. I walked into that dinner dressed in calm elegance, my face unreadable. My parents greeted me warmly, oblivious to the storm I carried inside. Adrian tried to smile at me, his eyes searching for signs of weakness. Lee sat beside him, her smirk sharp enough to cut glass. They thought I would suffer in silence. They thought I would swallow my humiliation. The room buzzed with laughter and clinking glasses until I stood up. Silence fell. With a steady hand, I placed my phone on the table, pressed play, and let the recordings and photos do the talking. Gasps filled the air. My parents' faces turned pale. Adrian's charm crumbled in seconds. Lee's confidence drained as the whispers grew louder. For the first time, they weren't in control. I was. I looked around the table, my voice calm, almost icy. You thought you could hide your betrayal, but tonight, everyone sees you for who you really are. The silence that followed wasn't just shock. It was the beginning of their downfall. The next few days felt like a series of shattered glass, each moment a piece of my former life that broke and scattered beyond repair. But as Adrian and Lee struggled to rebuild the facade of their lives, I moved forward, free of their poison, stronger than I had ever been. Adrian's reputation at work was in ruins. The CEO called him in for a private meeting, and word spread quickly. The lies, the cover-ups, the weeks of manipulation, all of it was laid bare. When he tried to explain, to plead with his colleagues, no one was listening anymore. The very people who had once admired him now turned their backs. The company started distancing itself from his name, and the whispers grew louder. But I didn't care about that. No, what mattered was the quiet satisfaction of watching him fall from the pedestal he had placed himself on, watching him try to save face, only to realize he had no ground to stand on. His smooth words were useless now. His lies had been exposed, and his charm had no effect. He was nothing more than a man trying to hold onto a reputation he no longer deserved. Lee, on the other hand, couldn't handle the weight of her own guilt. The people who once adored her, the friends who had seen her as the perfect, sweet cousin, now saw her as a traitor. Her world came crashing down in the form of whispered conversations behind her back, cold stares, and the complete loss of trust. It was painful to watch her unravel, but I didn't feel sorry. She had chosen this path, and now she had to walk it alone. When my parents finally confronted me, their faces filled with shame and disbelief, I simply told them the truth. You've known who he was, you've seen what she's done. I'm done with both of them. There were no tears, no apologies. My heart was no longer broken. It was healed by the power of clarity and by the strength I had found in myself. The dinner, the confrontation, the downfall, it was over. I had won. I had taken back my dignity, my power, and my life. Adrian and Lee could try to rebuild what they had lost, but I knew one thing for sure. No matter how hard they tried, they could never take back what they had stolen from me. As I walked away from it all, I realized that sometimes the greatest revenge isn't the destruction of others. It's simply reclaiming the life that's always been yours. And I was finally free.